Welcome to Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, brought to you by Byrne Production Services. Here, we explore the different ways business events can bring value to your organization, the latest technological advances in the event space, as well as providing you with actionable strategies to make a business event a success. Let's create an exceptional event experience.
Welcome to another episode of Production Value Matters, the business events podcast, and we are on location in Punta de Mita, Mexico for GDP Connections. And right now, I am joined by Nathalie Saikaly from Dell Technologies. Welcome, Nathalie.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so great to be here.
Excellent.
Been fortunate and thankful to be part of the GDP organization, being on their council. And we always found a way to get together once a year to share those learnings and best practices. So
Perfect.
It's been great. Just another great year.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit of how you got to where you are today and talk me a little bit through your career.
Awesome. It's a long story. Try to make it short here. So I was actually born and raised in Lebanon, in the Middle East. So I grew up there, did my BA, MA over there. And then once I graduated, because at that time, it's like you graduate, you got to start your job the week after, right? So we started and I was always in an agency environment. So worked in integrated marketing communication agency, and which evolves different aspects. It wasn't only events. It would be like advertising and PR and research and TV production. It has all the integrated mix. So spent some time there. And then moved to actually, at that time, my chair. It's part of the WPP network, where we planned and optimized media campaigns for companies like the Coca-Cola company, JSK and whatnot. So I would say that was a very integral part or phase of my career where dealing with tools and numbers and analyzing and trying to get the best out of something as a campaign and understanding how long do we have to stay on TV, on outdoor and print media. And, you know, so you get a bit of a really good mix of intentional presence out there for the crowd. And then from there, we actually moved to Qatar, my husband and I. And so again, back into the agency world and spent a good time working on various industries on the agency side. So worked with banking and oil and sports. I mean, obviously Qatar is big on sport. So we just did different industry and, you know, same gamut. It's from like the creative concept, you know, what their campaign looks like. When are they going outdoor with their campaign? So when is it in the print media? Is there a TV that needs to be produced? Is there any research that helps us understand consumer behavior so we can tailor the messaging around it? So it's very brand heavy, the early stage of the career. And from there, actually, at that time, my client hired me. It was the Qatar Olympic Committee. So I was lucky to spend a couple of times there before officially moving to Toronto. And home is Toronto now for the last 14 years. And my first 10 years in Toronto, I spent them as well back on the agency side. It was more, though, event focused. And it was really working with technology clients and working in that tech world, which is constantly evolving, as we know, which is something really dynamic. And, you know, I'm very passionate about. I love what I do every day. And technology really keeps you uncomfortable, which is great because while you could be doing the same job every day, you have to adjust things, right? And, you know, probably we're going to talk a little bit maybe about that today, but it's technology evolves, the industry is evolving and everything else around it has to shift.
Excellent.
Right. So, and today I work for Dell. So Dell was actually my client on the agency side and then my client ended up hiring me. So I've been officially with Dell, I would say about 3 years, but more like 13 years because I've really worked on the business for a long time. So very happy to be here. And I think it's been a great journey so far. So always learning.
So working for a big technology company, how do you decide which new technologies to incorporate into your events?
Great question. We are always on the lookout to really elevate and advance the attendee journey and the attendee experience. Aside from what the food looks like, what the venue looks like, what everything else looks like, it's like, how can we add little things here and there that would make it more intentional? And the reason behind it is, I'm sure you've experienced that in your own world as well. post-pandemic, a lot of things have changed. People's consumer behavior have changed, lifestyle have changed, and attention span has changed, right? So expecting really people to give us the same amount of time of their day or in their schedule to be with us has changed, right? So you got to really give them the right reason, good reason, and maybe change something in the format of what you're doing to really make it more intentional and more meaningful, right? So a lot has changed since then, and it's not only one component. It starts with what the agenda looks like, what are some of the gamification there, who are the experts they're meeting, where are you taking them? So it's a mix of things.
Absolutely. Could you discuss how AI is currently enhancing attendee experiences at your events?
Yes, we're definitely scratching the surface, and I hope there's somebody who nailed it or cracked that code at this point. I'd like to sit with them.
Yeah.
But I would say we're scratching the surface. It's baby steps, right? For a couple of reasons. Not because the tools are not there. I think the tools are ready for any one of us to use them. Though I think there's an education component, right? So us as leaders in the industry, our team, there's an education process where people have to feel comfortable embracing them, because we've seen a lot of AI fear and anxiety for people to just trying to understand it, right? So, but the reality is, make it work for you, right? And the make it work for you is really, how can you offload a lot of what you do? How can you bring to life experiences differently so you can focus on other things,
yes,
right?
excellent.
As a planner, in the industry. So AI has been integral. It's been on our top priority, which not only improves events, it improves like processes and procedures and efficiency and productivity as a whole. Because things are changing and everybody's trying to keep up with that. We're not the only ones, and everybody's up for that race. So
yeah, I think you've hit on it right there, that part of what people are trying to figure out is that educational piece around AI. That, not the best way to say it, but there's a lot of ignorance around where it could. And I think a little bit of fear. I think we've all seen the meme going around about the artist who says, they were supposed to do my dishes and clean my laundry, not do the art.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I would buy that in a second. But the way I've always perceived it is, it's like the advent of Excel. Like when Excel came out and spreadsheet, mathematics, all being done in a computer form, that improved efficiency.
Yeah.
And regarding AI as a tool to create those efficiencies within your organization, whether that's through the management of organization, and I think that there's an enormous opportunity in the event sector for us to find those efficiencies.
Absolutely.
Especially when we're talking about work-life balance and trying to reduce stress and cognitive load on professionals, one of the most stressful industries in the world. This is an enormous opportunity for us to grow that. So what major technological challenges have you encountered in event management, and how did you address them?
Yeah. And again, this is going back to a post-pandemic world. I think what everyone is competing on is attention span, right? It's no secret for anyone. As we said, people's priorities have changed. So I would say audience acquisition in general, like audience getting people to open your invite. First to open, right? And second to say, oh, this is relevant for me. I resonate with that. Makes sense. I'm going to click the register button. But this is half the battle, right? Because then you need them to actually show up. So, I would say audience acquisition and retention, right? Because you can acquire as much as you can, but you got to retain them, and you have that show rate really like on point on event days. So I would say that has been me, because so many competing priorities, right? Like talk about everyone's schedule with like, families or friends, or everything is, people's calendars are overloaded there. So really, audience act is a key thing, and there are tools out there. Scarcity of tools. I think it's more how we use it and how we use it in a meaningful way. So there are so many tools out there for AI that can do predictive analytics for audience act. So it says, based on whatever data you feed it, that it can give you meaningful learnings or insight out of it, right? So let's say it analyzes trends of when and how people show up for your program and the industry. So instead of you just sitting here playing with Excel, panicking that you are 4 weeks out and you only have 200 sign up while you need 500. There are tools out there that will empower you and will give you more informed, I would say, guidance and recommendation that you can use with your field and sales team out there to say, this is not unusual. And here's why. Everyone is just registering 2-3 weeks out these days, even for the paid ones, right? Or even travel ones, right? So I would say just, again, let it work for you. Use it to your advantage. And so many tools out there, again, for audience ad, depending who you're focusing on, right? Are you focusing on new buyers? Are you focusing on a cross-sell? Are you focusing on existing buyers, right? So whatever that gamut is, whatever your hypothesis is, look at it as a math equation there, just at your advantage. Feed it with the data securely. Obviously, that's important. In the tech world, there are many tools out there, and you got to know where to feed the information and look after all the data compliance and whatnot, and just, learn from it, right? And it's not the only place. I think it's always important to stay close with your stakeholders. Don't be siloed in whatever you do as an event planner, and be mindful that working in synergy with the different groups within your organization is key, because you got to listen, ask for feedback, be collaborative, understand what's going on, because they're sometimes closer to the customer than you are. And they can really tell you, oh yeah, by the way, that term actually conflicts. There is, I don't know, there's Super Bowl that day, just making this up right now. Or there is a conflicting other industry event, or there is very important holiday, whatever that is, right? So I would say be open-minded and embrace it, and have the courage to really get on that journey.
I love that context of the data analytics tool, because I think a lot of event professionals, whether they be planners or stakeholders, instinctually know, as you said, a couple of weeks out, we've got 200 registrations. We're supposed to have 500. Now we're a little worried. But they instinctually know, they're going to register in the next 2 weeks. But everybody struggles with the proof, because you have to go to your stakeholders and your leadership and say, don't worry. Why shouldn't I worry? Well, because I know. Well,
that's not enough.
That's not enough, right? So you need to go out and using a tool like AI to analyze data and say, this is what the data is telling us, that we shouldn't panic yet, because we're 3 weeks out. They're all going to register next week. And everybody's had that mea culpa moment where everybody registered the week before and they said, see, I told you it was going to work out. But nobody's going to get buy off on that, right? So what new technology trends should event professionals be aware of in the future, do you think?
I think there's a mind shift. I think our industry and the tech industry is undergoing major transformation. And there's a reason why I'm starting with that is it's really the openness to trying new things. It's the openness to say, I need to adopt AI part of my life because it's going to make my life easy, and buy into it, and not do it because your organization is only asking you to do, but because you really believe that it's going to make it easier for you. So you can focus on things that are more important, more strategic, requires that really human brain to connect these dots and come up with things, right? So I would say in our industry, really understanding that hard work beats talent, right? And I think as any industry pioneer in events will say, I've always done it this way. It's been great. We've done it, whatever. I think this is great. And I think there are lots of learning, and it's generational, right? What's true for a Gen Z, Gen X is different for a millennial. It's different for a baby boomer as well, right? So I would say just back to like the hard work is get out there and, start small, right? There's this overwhelmed feeling, these are conversations we're having at this conference as well of where do I start, right? It doesn't need to be all at once, but start slowly, right? Identify what's important for you. You can't really I'm sure there are so many ways. Like if you can pull up a slide, and somebody was sharing a slide as well here during the conference, there are hundreds of tools now, right? So it's not about, I want to use all these tools. I think prioritize, sit with your stakeholders, sit with your exec team, and try to understand where's their pain point, right? Is the pain point about leads, right? Is the pain point about brand awareness? Is the pain point about brand positioning? So it depends really what's the marketing challenge you're trying to solve out there, and then work backward. right?
Absolutely.
So understand the objective, understand what you're trying to get out of it. And then as a marketeer, right? Because event is the end result of it, right? But as a marketeer, then you sit down on the table and brainstorm with your team. This is where we're trying to go. And, what is that roadmap looking like? And where should I start, right? So really being mindful of what's the business objective behind what you're trying to do and working backward to get there. And not just saying, oh yeah, I'm coming across all of these on LinkedIn, on social, and I follow the following and I want to try. Like, I think that becomes really overwhelming. And I think teams are not really reacting well to their leaders and organization asking them to embrace it. I think it's more really pausing and understanding what we're trying to do and then getting there.
Yeah, that sense of
piecing it together.
That sense of being overwhelmed, because we've all seen that slide that you're referring to, where there was one interview I listened to about a year into the pandemic. Somebody mentioned that there were 873 different platforms.
Yeah.
And so
probably grow as we were talking.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting to see it sort of grow and shrink and grow and shrink and acquire. But certainly even today, when you look at that, and I think it's Bold Push puts out a industry watchdog look at that, and to see still how many specific tools. And I'm reminded of during the pandemic, a lot of meeting planners who were doing that shift into technology because they were forced to, because of circumstance. We're always looking for a one-stop shop or an all-encompassing solution.
That doesn't exist.
And
it's
it doesn't
not a push
exist.
of a button. No.
Yeah, 100%.
Everybody's trying to.
And I love your point about start with your objective first and then find the tool that helps you achieve that, which takes a little bit more education and a little bit more time and research. But once you do that, then that process becomes much simpler.
Agree.
And so how do you adjust your event strategies for different audiences across North America?
That's my favorite topic, actually. I think you started by what was my journey. And I believe of myself as a global citizen because I worked across so many continents. And one of the areas that I really like and embrace a lot is those cross-cultural differences. When you are bringing to life a campaign or an event or you name it, right? And believe it or not, even within North America, we have those cultural differences, right? What you do in Dallas is different from what you do to your New York audience. It's very different from Chicago, different from Toronto as well. So I would say it has multiple ways for you to customize it and be more relevant to your demographic. And it starts with the location. So the location of the venue we pick has to be attractive and relevant to your Dallas audience, right? And I'm going to give an example on that one. That was an interesting one we picked last year. Thought leadership, an external speaker you bring to the table, right? So if you're running your event in Dallas, you got to bring someone from the Cowboys, right?
For sure, yeah.
That's about on brand, on right. And what if you are actually in the AT&T Stadium? So this is where we run our program last year. So we were in that venue. So that was a big hit for our attendees. It's like, you got to be on the field. And that's where we ran all our event. There was no beige rooms with a door. It was all open space, right?
Fantastic.
And we brought in Emmett Smith, right? Because you can go wrong with that.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So that was for Dallas. For New York, it was a different venue, but we did bring in Eli Manning, right? Eli Manning, MVP, NFL, for New York Giants. So of course, the audience are going to show up for it, right? And I'm not saying they are the only draw, but it helps retention. It helps when your people show up at 10. It gives them a good reason to spend the day with you, right? And you're really actually giving them a very exclusive experience to see these, I'm going to say, they are celebrities, but they are thought leaders as well. Like in sports, the things they go through, there's a lot to learn from outside tech, outside AI, outside everything, because we're humans, right? And we love to resonate with everyone's story and we learn a lot from it, right? So starts with, again, venue, speakers, food, right? So can't go wrong. You're in New York. We've had the famous hot dog. We've had the cheesecake as well, right? When we were in Dallas, we had the churros. We had the brisket tacos, right? So just little things here and there that you think through, I think goes a long way. Because at the end of the day, our job is not only to bring attendees, to push at them 10,000 slides when we are at conferences. It is really to build a community, build that connection, build that feel good, right? Build that feel good of people walking away and saying, that felt really good. And as they say, people will not remember what you said. They will remember how you made them feel.
Of course.
Right? So really working a lot on those feelings when you are on site with them, because the intention is not really to, again, push those millions of slides on them. You got to, tell the story, get enough attention. And those conversations can happen after. It's not the job of the conference to deliver that, right? But the conference is there to bring them together. And it's an icebreaker. It brings people together. It creates that rapport. It creates that relationship, which goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
So final question. Usually we ask one of two questions, either who you would like to have lunch with in the events industry or practical tips that you can give to any of our listeners on how they could adopt or evaluate technology. But you had mentioned that it might not be somebody in the industry that you would have lunch with. Who's the person that you would love to have lunch with?
So in line with we're humans, in line with building connection, in line with let's spend more time on making people feel, the way we want them to feel and walk away. I think one of the speaker that comes to mind, I mean, there are multiple, but this one stands out for me. And, it's probably generational as well. And she has nothing to do with the events industry, but she can definitely influence it. It's Brené Brown, right? So she's a researcher. She spent years researching courage, vulnerability, as well as empathy as well. So I'm a strong believer that she can influence any industry because these are things you need to learn more about so you are better leaders, so you are, better individual contributors. So indirectly, yes, she's teaching you things about life, but at the end of the day, she is really shaping the way you show up to your life, whether it's at work or at home, because everything is transferable, right?
Right.
So I would say she would be one I would love to meet one day. I'll try as much as I can when I have time to listen to her podcast or, watch her Netflix series or whatnot. But she's phenomenal. I think she leaves a mark in everything she does. And regardless where you are as an industry, I think everybody needs to know more about and learn more about how to lead with empathy, right? And I think the understanding of being courageous and being brave and being open as well, and vulnerability. I think it goes a long way for people to be their authentic self with their teams as a leader, and regardless what their role is to just be human, right? So for me, being a human is really important, right? Because it's not only translated in when you're doing your work, obviously you're working with a larger team, but it's also when you're creating experiences for your attendee, be human, right?
Absolutely.
Be human. It's a business. It has to run. You've got metrics. You've got all that jazz. You've got content to bring awareness to, but also be human. Give them the time to have fun at your program. We call it kidulting, right? It's like adulting, kidulting.
Yeah.
So give access for your attendees to have fun, to play pickleball at your event, to do an AI photo booth where they have fun and look at their picture from the 80s to the 2000s, right?
Yeah.
So again,
if we did photos of the 80s, I would have a lot more acne.
Yeah. It was a fun one. We actually did it recently.
Yeah.
So, but it's just really that human aspect, which I think as a humanity, I think sometimes, our life got too busy that we are really rushing and moving really fast. So really pausing and taking the time to get grounded again and be a bit more mindful in everything you do, I think goes a long way.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Nathalie, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. That was a great conversation. Thank you. Great reminders for me as well. It's good. It's like you have to listen to yourself as well to be like, makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, is brought to you by Byrne Production Services. To find out more about Byrne Production Services and how putting on events can drive value for your business, visit byrneproductionservices.com. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Production Value Matters, thank you so much for listening.